I do not remember your love, Elysim. I've tried. I've tried to recreate it, to spark it anew in my memory, but it is gone. A hollow, dead thing. For years I clung to the memory of it. Then the memory of the memory, and then nothing. The Seldarine took that from me too. I look upon you and feel nothing. I remember nothing but you turning your back on me along with all the others.
Irenicus there pretty much sums up what I've been feeling about BioWare for years. And it's a great introduction to the video because it is from a game that BioWare made almost 30 years ago. Now for the record, I'm going to have a couple things to say that are a little bit different and similar at the same time to what many people have said. But as everyone is weighing in on the BioWare crisis, so to speak, I felt the need to as well. After all, I have this gaming channel, do I not? And I have to say at the outset that BioWare and we go way back. The first BioWare game I played was Shattered Steel 1996, when it came out. And then the original Baldur's Gate, when it came out, 98. So all these whippersnappers who got onboarded at BioWare during the Mass Effect era, or Dragon Age, Inquisition even. No. I go way back before that with BioWare. As I've said many times on the channel over the past year or so, BioWare has been dead for a long time. Some people only now are coming to this realization because EA has basically made it so through the downsizing and the firing of various individuals. Of course, everyone has heard now of this corpo letter that was sent out that was couched in corpo speak, and basically a lot of people have been made redundant. Now, there are a couple of things I want to say here that you won't hear from a lot of people. The first thing I want to say is something related to a general perception that comes from a lot of people who play games, who make content, and that is the notion that game developers are a special hallowed class of individuals. Kind of like a priestly class, if you will. The clerics of the world. They're not just workers, they're not just employees, they're not just people who have a job, a specific type of job, mind you, but a job. They're special. And so you have to support the devs. Support the devs. You hear this phrase again and again and again. It's very strange to me because as much as I support some studios and don't support other studios, I support them with my money because I think they put out good quality products, primarily in the first place. And in second place, maybe they have a good way of dealing with their customers on top of that, right? So those two factors. They have good customer relations and they make really good games. My personal support of any given developer is predicated on that. They make good games that I like, personally, and they maintain good customer relations. That is the reason why I support so strongly Owlcat. They make games that I like a lot, and they are amiable and fair to their customers. And they deal with their customers in a friendly and interactive way, and they try to get good information from their customers so as to craft their games in a better way in the future, so as to appeal to their customers better. Those are my criteria based. That's why I support Owlcat. That's also why I support Larian to almost the same degree. But I don't feel that game developers, even really good ones like Larian or Owlcat, are some specially sanctioned class of hallowed individuals that are untouchable, and that they deserve to have their jobs on principle simply because they exist. That's not true of any other sector. Now, I'm pushing 50, and I've had jobs where I got fired. Twice, in fact. I had a job years ago where I got fired because I basically had an injury, and it was a physical manual labor job, and I couldn't do it anymore, and I was let go. I had another job, an office job, and I wasn't able to do the job particularly well because I have a chronic illness that was really bad at the time, and so I got fired. Now, was it bad for me? Yes. Was it sad for me? Yes. It sucked. But them's are the breaks. Unfortunately, that's the nature of pretty much any job. If you have a waiter that's constantly spilling food and drinks on customers, are you going to say, support the waiter? Support the waiter so he keeps his job even though he's doing it incompetently, even though he's spilling drinks on customers all the time? Are you going to support a shoe manufacturer whose shoes fall apart a week and a half after you buy them, repeatedly? Support the shoe manufacturer. Are you going to support an automobile manufacturer whose brakes don't work and get your wife and your child killed? Probably not. Now, of course, these are different examples. But at the end of the day, developers are making products. Yes, there's an artistic element to it that doesn't exist for, say, wagering or making a car. And that's an important element. But they're still making a product and it has to sell and it has to appeal to people. I don't view game developers as a sanctioned class that should be uniformly and unanimously supported, independent of the work they do, i.e. the games they produce, and independent of their behavior, i.e. the Matt Hansons of the world. I don't view it that way. So I'm not on board with just support the devs. Is it sad for some of the developers at BioWare that they got sacked? Sure. But on the other hand, a lot of these developers were piss poor at writing and piss poor at their jobs. We only have to look at Dragon Age The Veilguard to know this. Now, I also see a lot of people putting all the blame on EA, all of it, and not on BioWare. The reality is that both EA and BioWare share blame here. EA, unfortunately, has not been the best taskmaster for BioWare since the acquisition those many years ago. And sometimes they have put undue pressure on BioWare. I think Dragon Age 2 is a good example, where they were forced to produce a game in a very, very short period of time. But let's be honest, despite the fact that BioWare initially was tasked with making a game in Dragon Age The Veilguard that was supposed to be online and multiplayer with microtransactions and what have you, they still had over 4 years probably to turn this into a nice single-player game. And they couldn't do it. And before that, you had Anthem, and before that you had Andromeda. Like I said, I've been saying for years on this channel and elsewhere that BioWare is dead. It's just a name. People make companies. And some people I see posting online, primarily on Blue Sky, interestingly enough, are pretending like this revelation is like the discovery of fire, right? Wow, certain developers make certain games at a certain company, they leave, and the company doesn't make good games anymore. Wow, they've discovered fire. Give me a bloody break. This has been known forever. And the reality is that BioWare has no longer been manned by good, competent people for quite some time. Look at all the people that have left. The director has quote-unquote left, although in all likelihood this director was fired. The writer, Trick Weeks, who wrote the masterpiece of a character, Tosh, has also been made redundant. Shocking, I know. So, again, I am not surprised one bit. This has been a long time coming. BioWare has not been what it used to be for eons in terms of gaming years. So why is this a surprise? And then you see people coming out saying, oh, wow, I can't believe this is happening. It might finally be over. I've said this before, and basically the analogy I would say is along the lines of some marriage that you used to have that was really good 20 years ago, but you've been divorced for 10 years. It's done, it's over, it's not good anymore. And you are still talking about it like you were in the prime time, the honeymoon phase of your marriage. No, that time is long gone. Time to move on. When you have a bad marriage and you get divorced, you move on. You don't lament it and cling to it eternally until the end of your life. And that's why, as I said at the beginning, I kind of relate to Irenicus. I look at BioWare and I feel nothing. I look at BioWare and I remember nothing. It's dead, and they have been dead in the water for a long time. My interest in Dragon Age The Veilguard was initially solely predicated on a morbid curiosity as to how the story of the Dragon Age franchise, the world of Thetis, comes to an end. What is the lore behind it? What is the origin of the Blight? The Elves, all these things. And all those questions have now been answered. Rather poorly, I should add, very poorly in some respects, but I know the answers now. And there's nothing keeping me clinging to BioWare now. They've been dead in my eyes for years. And guess what? The good developers that used to be at BioWare have moved on to various places. One place above all, Archetype Entertainment, and with people like James Olin and Chad Robertson and Drew Karpyshyn, among others. These are people who are probably still competent, who are making this game Exodus a sci-fi action RPG that I still think is going to be a good game, despite my reservations about the marketing and the lack of advertisement. I made a separate video about that. I won't repeat it here. People have moved on. So people move on, they join new studios, and hopefully, and likely, they bring their talent with them, and they inject their talent into the games they're working on at the new studios. So what I'm saying here basically is you should not cling to names per se. Yes, Larian is a fantastic developer and studio, but without Sven Fink at the helm, that almost certainly would not be the case. He is the boss and the glue that holds it together. Sven Finke is basically Larian, although of course he has many hundreds of people that work for him and make the games great that he wants to make, but you get my point. If Larian has the name, but is owned by EA or Ubisoft, it wouldn't be Larian anymore. The same thing with Owlcat. Owlcat, like I said, has a very, very good way of dealing with his customers, with their questions and surveys. They're friendly, they're approachable, and they themselves are passionate about the games they make. In the AMA recently, they said, if you want to make good games, you need to be interested and passionate about the genre and enjoy playing them too. That's what makes a studio. It happens to be the case it's called Owlcat now. It happens to be the case that Larian is called Larian now. And if Exodus turns out to be a really good game, which I think it probably will be, and I hope it will be, then the reason is not because it's called Archetype Entertainment, but because of the people working there. And on the other hand, again, if people are working at a place, despite the name, like BioWare, and they suck, a la BioWare, what do you expect? They're going to produce bad games or even trash games. And I'm sorry, but Dragon Age The Veilguard was a trash game. It undersold. It had some of the worst writing I've ever seen in an RPG, some of the worst characters. I mean, Tosh might go down in history as the worst written, worst presented character in the history of RPGs. Ever. It's quite possible. And then you make your bed and have to lie in it, and then try to garner sympathy. On top of all of that, BioWare has, in recent years, done everything in their power to alienate their customers. They have not maintained an amicable, customer-friendly relationship. No, instead, they've been outwardly hostile to many of their former fans and customers, and have worked in and created a bubble, an ideological bubble to be very specific, meant to attract a very certain subset of their customers, and it even created the so-called council, I'm sure you know, the Dragon Age Council, a council of lay people advising them about the game. Well, how did that work out? And guess what? You had a lot of these members of the council praising Dragon Age The Veilguard, and ceasing to do so after the abysmal fails. Some of these people, who had their names in the credits even, as in they had their names literally in the credits of the game, gave the game glowing praise, with a few critique points here and there, but nonetheless glowing praise for the game. But when the fecal matter hit the fan, guess what happened? They took their entire review of the game down. That's the type of audience that BioWare has tried to cultivate, and those are the type of people that they worked with. Political activists and ideologues that don't primarily care about the quality of games that they make, or for that matter, more importantly, for fun and immersive games that serve the purpose of escapism. And that is, unfortunately, the reason why BioWare has failed, the reason why Dragon Age The Veilguard has failed, and the reason why the audience they have cultivated doesn't get it and is living in their echo chamber, filleting each other mutually about how lamentable it is and how they deserve better. When in fact they produced a really bad product. Developers are good because the people work there, and because they produce good products, primarily, and secondarily because they maintain good customer relations. That's super important in any business. That's why I love Owlcat, and that's why I like Larian. They do both really well. And I'm sorry, plenty of companies don't. Ubisoft definitely does not. BioWare does not. And the list goes on and on and on. And yes, they produce crappy games of poor quality. And on top of that, they go out of their way to alienate their customers with really bad decisions in terms of their marketing and the things they put into games. The same applies to Obsidian and Avowed, which I've talked about at length in a previous video. The time is now to do things differently if you're a developer, and to perceive and interpret things differently if you're a player or a consumer of games. Anyway, I've said enough. I hope to not speak on the topic of BioWare anytime soon again, because they've been dead for a long time. Give it a break. Let them rest in peace. Move on from your divorce and find somebody new. But if you like my takes and you like my content, you can leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. It's much appreciated as it really helps out the channel. And I'll check you out next time. Until then, take care.